Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and we got a lot to talk about. On the phone with me today, Hank Goldberg from Florida. Good morning, Hank.
I hope these playoffs don't end. It's becoming an annuity.
That's right. You were right on with Boston last night, and LeBron got a little banged up, and he didn't look good after he came back in the game. He looked a little shook up.
Well, he came back and he started scoring right away. I tell you, it wasn't the injury that made a difference. I think what made a difference was that in the second half, when he came out, he made an adjustment, the Boston coach, and he put Monroe in, and Monroe, who's a big physical defender, took away the rim. And Cleveland couldn't get to the rim anymore, and LeBron couldn't get to the rim anymore, and made all the difference in the world. Monroe, basically, that change turned the game around.
Yeah, it sure did. Well, now they go home and they're laying 6.5, 7 points. That's a big number. I mean, even though they might win the game, that's a big number. You have to really buckle down. And Cleveland's going to have to buckle down and show us what they're made of, because they certainly haven't done very well.
Well, their defense is terrible. They can't defend, and it's a question of whether Boston can score on the road, which in their last series they didn't do very well.
No, they have not. They have not done well on the road. And a couple close games, but it's been a home series for them. They've won every game and they've covered every game. So it's pretty amazing. Any news flashes on the gambling issue with the bill passing and everything?
Well, it looks like there's going to be a lot of conversation. Well, let's start with what's happening with Congress. If Congress is going to get involved or not. There's a lot of sentiment for having Congress put one unified law in to cover sports betting, as opposed to going state by state. I'm not sure Congress wants to get involved in that, but I don't know where that's going to happen, or whether that's going to happen or not. That's part of it. The rest of it is what's going to happen with college sports. They may limit college sports betting to the tournament. They may put a limit on the amount of money being bet on college sports, or they may eliminate college sports betting altogether. And then there's the tax problem. Some people think that are mistaken in thinking that Las Vegas sports betting is going to be in trouble. They're supporting the expansion of this, because who do you think is going to run the legalized sports betting at even the racetracks? William Hill is already going to do Monmouth. They've already got a deal, and it's the sports books and Nevada sports books who are going to be probably, for the most part, taking over sports betting all over the country. And people are still going to bet with bookmakers, because I'll give you one simple reason: credit.
And that's one reason. The second reason is they're probably going to be able to give better odds. Not better odds, but better pricing. And because these states are going to end up overcharging the players. You can bet on that. Got the NFL, the NBA are looking for a piece of the action. The states are looking for 1% integrity fees. They're talking about a 12% tax here and there. All those things have to be paid for, and the player is going to end up paying for it, where the offshores and the illegal bookmakers do not charge those fees. So they're still going to be in existence. And what this is going to do, this is going to broaden the base of players. There's going to be a lot more players come out of the woodwork saying, well, maybe I'll make a bet now. I know it's not illegal to do so, and so they'll make. And I don't think you're going to see very big bets made at these places because I don't think they're going to take big bets. And
I think that's overestimated. I don't think that every Tom, Dick, and Joe is going to suddenly start running out to his local facility and start betting. I just think that the base is there for sports betting, and I don't think that a guy who lives in half an hour from Monmouth Park is suddenly going to get in his car and go down to the racetrack and start betting right away. I think people are overestimating that. Also, I don't know. I'm just a little leery about the whole thing and how fast it's. Mark Cuban was on with Dan Patrick, and he said that it could be a long process, but he could see the time where people will come to a Mavericks game and be able to walk up to the counter, order a hot dog, a beer, or a Coke, or whatever, and put down a few dollars on how many points are going to be scored in the first quarter. He said that's a while. That's looking down the line, but that he thinks that's where it's going. The other thing is that he says that he foresees, and this is kind of interesting and a little complex, but it has to do with what's going on right now between Comcast and ESPN, which is going into some kind of litigation. The reason that ESPN was so anxious to take over the Fox regional networks is because I think long term they see themselves getting into the gambling business themselves, so that you can go to your phone and you can dial up a ball game on ESPN on their new facilities that they're starting with Plus and whatnot, and you'll be able to bet with ESPN. And that's interesting, considering that they're owned by Disney.
Well, that would be very interesting. I mean, what they're talking about is legalizing sports betting in the states, run by the states, and that doesn't mean in a private company like ESPN. I'm kind of confused about how that would work.
Well, it's part of the technology, and the other thing is that Disney will fight very hard to keep legalized sports betting out of Florida. Yet Disney owns ESPN, which is long term actually going to be, from what Cuban says, going to be pursuing a way to get into the business. They already, have to some degree with whatever the proposition stuff on individual performance.
Well, the playing field is out there, and there's going to be people grabbing spots of it because there's going to be money to be made. Where money is involved, everybody's going to rush to it. It's like the gold rush. It's going to be interesting. I think it's a 5-year rollout. I think you're going to see little progress here and there, and little by little, over the next 5 years, you'll see multiple states joining into the game, and big businesses, and of course the Congress, the Senate, and the leagues are going to be shuffling the deck a little bit to try to get a piece of the action. There's no question. And of course the federal government, we do have a states' rights issue, so the states are allowed to make their own decisions, and at least that's the way the laws are written today. And the federal government a lot of times steps on their toes. I'm not sure that's going to happen very easily because there's a lot of push to let the states do their own thing now. It's an interesting situation. We got the playoffs, like you said. I wish they would continue. We're going to get down to, it looks like we might have a Boston Warriors final, which nobody would have expected once Boston had all those injuries, but it sure looks like that could happen.
Well, I'm talking about that series. You know, it's. I'm wondering if Houston's going to get a win. And you know, listening to the coach talk about his defense and how their offense for that matter, and how they don't have any structure to their offense, and that they play that individual type offense. And he said, we won a lot of games playing the way we're playing, and he says he's not willing to change. That's just stupidity. And, you know, every coach, including Popovich, made adjustments during the playoffs. And yet this coach doesn't seem to be willing to make any adjustments whatsoever to his structure or unstructured offense. And, but, you know, if they get a hot shooting night from their players, you know, they could probably get a win at home. But I don't see this series going more than 5 games.
I sort of agree with you. I mean, I'm all over the Warriors to win the whole the whole thing. So, no, the regular season you can play an isolation game and you rest players here and there and everything. But when you're into the playoffs, you got to play some defense, and you got to worry about the matchups. And like you said, with Monroe coming in and guarding the rim, shutting down the rim for the Cavs players to get there, that's a big adjustment. Stevens is just the master in the game right now. He's making all the right moves, and at this point, the only people that are going to give him trouble would be the coach and the players of the Warriors. Right now, it does look like those two teams are going to go there. Now, LeBron is always the wild card to play if he can come back and get some help from the other guys. I mean, this guy gets 40, and the rest of the team gets 40. It's kind of crazy. It's very poorly done.
I also think that Cleveland's going to lose a player. I think the guy who shoved Horford is probably going to be suspended for a game.
You mean JR?
Yeah, because when the league looks at that play, they're definitely going to over. How the officials didn't rule that as a flagrant is beyond me. That was a poorly officiated game last night, too.
That was definitely a flagrant in my mind. I don't know what they were thinking. But maybe they were just trying to be politically correct. Everybody tries to be politically correct these days. Anything in baseball that you are excited about?
No.
The Diamondbacks have gone into a slump. The Dodgers are slumping.
Greinke got a win last night.
That was big for them, but they haven't scored over 2 runs in all but one game for the last 10 games. I mean, they got a good pitching matchup today, I believe, but and it's a low price. Actually,
I'll tell you, the weather is playing havoc on the East Coast right now with the scheduling, and the Northeast and Baltimore is they've got massive flooding in Frederick and the Baltimore area, which is probably going to affect the racing there this week. And I talked to Wayne Lucas this morning, asked him about his 2 horses. I was wondering if he was high at all on Sporting, on his second horse that he entered, Sporting Chance. He didn't sound all that enthusiastic about him. The horse has trouble behaving himself on the racetrack. He's trouble prone, but he likes his other horse a little bit. He said he wishes the race was run last week, because the horse that came out of the Derby in pretty good shape, and he ran a decent race in the Derby, and he was enthusiastic about that. There's some people who think that Justify is not 100%. I've heard now from 2 different outfits that question that the fact that he was limping around last week might lead to something more significant. I talked to the people who train the horse that ran second in the Louisiana Derby. They're owned by the ownership of the New Orleans football and basketball teams, and their horse ran a strong, fairly good race in the Derby. He threw a shoe during the course of the race, and he also was blocked a couple of times during the course of the race, and they say he's training very well. I think that by Friday I'm going to come up with a pretty good long shot exacta possibility, although I won't throw Justify out. I asked Wayne what he thought about how Justify looked, and he said, we're all going to be running for second place.
Well, if he's healthy, that's probably true. Yeah, the guy, that horse is really, he sure looks like a Triple Crown winner to me. But
well, we'll see. Baffert yesterday said that backed off a little bit about his confidence. When he was asked about how the horse was doing, he said, well, if he doesn't bounce, he'll be fine. That's the first thing negative he said since the Derby. And, when I talk to the people from, I can't remember the horse's name right now, but he's trained by Tom Amos, who's a very good trainer, and they've changed jockeys to Irod Ortiz, who's a top rider out of New York. And this is a horse who's training well coming up to this race. And they said they were watching Justify, and they said that if you watched his two hind legs, they're not in total sync with one another if you watched his workouts. And that's the second outfit that has called my attention to the fact that Justify might not be 100%. I'll have more on that as the week goes on.
that's big news, Hank. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else you want to cover before we sign off?
Well, if it continues to rain, it'd be horses that favor the slop will run big again. And it looks, they're saying it's going to rain on Saturday, and it's going to rain every day leading up to the Preakness. It's a shame that we can't get better weather for the Triple Crown races. I've seen sloppy tracks before in Baltimore. I remember one year they had me stationed in the infield when I was covering the races for ABC, or I guess it was for ESPN and ABC. And it was raining like the dickens, and I was undercover and I went into the ABC hospitality tent between races to stay dry. And that was a rough afternoon because it was very sloppy in the infield. And I had to spend a whole afternoon there. Wow.
The good old days, right?
Yeah. But it's a shame if it doesn't stay dry. But one thing good about being in the press box is that they serve crab cakes during the afternoon, and always look forward to that.
Well,
Maryland crab cakes are delicious.
Maryland has the good crab cakes, that's for sure. I've had them before, delicious, and they do it great. Hank,
but I had a great conversation with Wayne this morning, and I always look forward to sitting down on the bench in front of his stall, and we spend about 20 minutes together or so talking about a lot of things, and he was delighted to hear from me this morning, and we had a nice conversation. He was very candid.
That's great. Great relationship. Hank, thank you very much for today. Hank's picks and mine are both at jimfeist.com, and we'll be back on Friday with another podcast. Thank you very much, Hank.
Okay, you too.